Recorded January 10th, 2024. Good afternoon, Brody. Good afternoon, Brody. There's two Brodies.
How does
Oh,
that happen?
it's,
Magic.
it's the magic of cloning, right? Time space continuum. That's what does it, man.
Oh,
Finally there.
true.
Finally.
Henrik, what's up, man?
Not much, not
How,
much.
how are you doing?
Thanks for inviting me. I'm doing pretty awesome. Yeah,
You
Let's
Why are
just
you
know,
doing
say
awesome, Henrik? Go ahead, spill the beans.
spill the beans. Yeah. I got this little email from Microsoft yesterday.
Mhm.
mm-hmm.
Congratulations on your MVP award.
MVP.
Woo!
Look at that there. And
Excellent. I should have had
Yeah,
sound effects ready for that. That's amazing, Henrik.
look at
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I remember when Henrik first asked the question, "How do I become an MVP?" And he quickly, "Is this the fastest MVP we've had on the show? I don't know, Martin, or was it uh,
Does
Eric
Morton really
Manning?"
count? I mean,
No, Martin
Does
doesn't count.
Martin really count?
He's not human. It doesn't count. Eric Manning, I think he got it fairly quickly. Mona from Blue
Pomona.
Voyant, yeah,
true.
yeah, she got hers pretty fast too.
We're
So
here just, elevating people's careers on the Microsoft Security Insights Show podcast experience. And Henrik is just the latest in our amazing journey.
yeah,
Thank you, Henrik, for giving us even better metrics moving forward.
come on
Yes.
the show, become a Microsoft most valuable professional. Most
Yeah.
valuable professional.
Watch it. What you guys are saying, you're gonna get stormed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Henrik, what does an MVP enable you to do? Please remind our listeners and viewers and me, because I kind of forget all the details. What happens? Do you get a special club card at your latest hotels? Do you get discounts on car insurance? Like, what's the deal here? I can't talk.
I kind of haven't had the time to read all the stuff yet because it just happened yesterday, and I have real work to do also. So I'm reading in the middle of the night, but I gotta sleep also. But of course, MVP means that you will become part of a community, a really friendly community, from what I hear.
Mhm.
And you get to go to MVP Summit in Seattle. And yeah, everybody's joking with me because we're a developer company, and they say, "Oh, so you're a minimal viable product now."
A minimal viable
I,
product.
yeah,
Sense of
what?
humor. All right, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Love it.
it's a lot of hard work. You know, it's a lot of contribution to the community, the enhancement of whatever particular product or skill set that you have. I have a joke also. Um, Brody said that everyone that comes on the show, if you want to be an MVP, this is where you start,
That's where you go, baby.
except for Frank.
Oh, he's gonna hate you.
Frank is going to hate me.
Oh, he's
I-
gonna
I'll get
hate
a phone
you.
call. I'll get a phone call from Frank. I like no matter how many recommendations I write, they like anybody but Frank. I'm like, sorry.
Oh,
Uh,
poor Frank. We're
yeah.
gonna. Well, I mean, sorry, Frank. But speaking of Henrik, I mean, we got our chats always just packed with listeners and viewers. I mean, look, we've got Trip giving you congrats, Henrik. What else we got here? We got Trevor. He's
Trevor's-
jealous. He's jealous. He got MVP. That's crazy. What else we got here? No, but he's throwing a congrats out, which is very nice. Noodle, there we go. Noodle, of course. Congrats, Henrik. That's wonderful. See, folks, if you join us live, you get interaction, you get call outs on the show. That's fantastic. Everybody gets to give Henrik a round of applause here. Oh, someone whose name I don't recognize. Yuli Muli. I'm just going to go ahead and mispronounce that. Another congratulations. So there you go, bud. Great work.
Yep.
We're really happy for you.
Yep.
Yeah, and somebody actually joked with me, goodbye, leisure time.
Goodbye leisure time. Yeah, that would be it. Always working. Seems like Morton's always working. But hey, we know what Henrik accomplished this week. Brody, what have you been doing?
Well, Edward, I just want to take a moment and say that the Winnipeg Jets are the #1 hockey team in the National Hockey League. And this wasn't just for a day or 6 hours before the other top teams caught up in points. We have been the top team in the NHL for about a week now, and we're on a 7-game win streak. And look at this! Look how beautiful this logo is. Look at this!
Okay.
It's just beautiful. You can't. We're all pinching ourselves here, all of us Winnipeg Jets fans. I'm just so happy right now. Yeah, who knows what's going to happen, because we can't have nice things. But I'm just so happy about my hockey team right now. So I'm just going to start there. Go ahead, Edward.
How far are we from the All-Star game?
Well, we're very close to the All-Star break, which I'm unhappy about because we're on such a roll. So I hate when there's a break coming.
Yeah.
You're
want
on
a
a
break.
roll, and then the break happens, and then you got like slow legs and everything. Everybody's in chat giving me a hard time. You know what, chat? They get it. We'll see at the playoffs. We'll see in the playoffs.
That may be the only Jets team in existence that makes the playoffs. Because the New York Jets are not going to make the playoffs.
I took Garrett Wilson, thinking that Aaron Rodgers was going to light him up in fantasy football, and I also took Dalvin Cook. And Wilson was okay, but Cook was not okay. And yeah, Aaron Rodgers snapping that Achilles on the first play was not ideal. But I guess that's what happens when you give a 40-year-old who's into interesting medicine the ability to get back into football.
I
But
sit in the dark room all the time. Yeah, I actually had a good week this week. I read some stuff. I think I sent an email to you that intra identity protection non-takes into account API anomalies that are coming in, making calls. Reading up on that. That's pretty interesting.
Yes, and we're going to post information on that, I think, on Discord and in our show notes, right, Edward? Because that's a very interesting, in-depth piece of information that you're sharing, and we want everyone to check that out. I mean, there's so many great implications for that with Copilot, with third-party apps connecting. Like, it seems like you're really excited about it.
Especially when you're doing these mutual apps, like when something says sign on with Google or sign on with Facebook or you need to see these things, right? And this is just pass-through exploitation where you're trusting one entity. And I tell individuals be very careful with your design of things like external API authentication, especially when you use external identities and B2B and stuff like that. Identity is not my super strong point anymore. We got to get some of our identity folks back on. It seems to be tremendous amount of progress being made in intra and around identity protection, right? I also want, when we do our next show was just us, I did a MDI consult assessment and assisted deployment. It has changed. I saw a very interesting get, and I'll get the notes. I sent an email myself to send it. If you know what MDI is, it is Microsoft Defender for Identity. It looks at protecting your on-premise identity infrastructure or fabric against lateral movement, privilege escalation, basically protecting you against the kill chain. And the kill chain was invented by Lockheed Martin, I believe, right? Where someone gains the toehold, looks for escalation of privileges, and starts doing lateral movement until ultimately they have domain dominance. And I know that the way that you generally deploy it is that you run the health of your domain controllers and you deploy sensor. So we talked about it toward the end of last year, where they now take in looking at the activity based around Active Directory certificate service as well as Active Directory federation services. But they also run another script that looks and will assess your environment in a different manner than the capacity planner. And I saw the script. I said, I've never run that. So I blew away my environment because I didn't want any remnants of it. And I'm going to run it in that manner where they tell you run the capacity planner and then run this prerequisite or assessment script. I think what it does, it looks at where there are gaps in your auditing and such, where the capacity planner does it. So I'm going to write it up. I know Rod wants us to put more stuff on Substack. I thought it was pretty interesting. I went through it. I'm like, this is slick, right? I did not know about that. And there's some enhancements coming to Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, or MDA, if they're showing it. We're going to talk about that too. And in my personal lab, I got the unified XDR and SIM. Finally, I can see it all here now. I subscribed to it. So it's in there.
Let me try. I haven't had that yet. I keep forgetting to sign up for that private preview because no good reason other than I put everything off and procrastinate and then loop back. That's just how I do things in my life, apparently. Let me just check that out. Defender.microsoft.com. Are we live yet? No, I'm back to the old one. All right, I got to get on that program, Edward. I got to get on it.
Reach out to friend of the show, Christina Quick. She'll get you in.
I will. I hate just like calling people up. I should just go through the same process. But yeah, I will. Maybe I'll float that. I'll ask her. Absolutely.
It's all about
But
how you ask.
it's about how
Yeah.
you ask.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
I'm a very polite person. We're very polite up north. And super quick before we get to our guest, I've started just having some conversations about working with the decentralized identity capabilities of Entra ID. This was just a conversation that started today with a major project that I'm involved with. It's going to be very interesting to see how that evolves, and I've been very interested in the decentralized identity conceptual topic for a while now, and the fact that Microsoft's got the option for a third party to validate someone's identity before passing along that authorization to the party that they're trying to authenticate to. It's going to, I think, lead to a really successful engagement on this particular public sector customer. So, yeah.
I don't know much about it, but it sounds like it's a clearinghouse approach where you have validation entities that say, I know who that person is. I've seen his ID, social security number, blah, 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 like in a passport of a sort. Someone has to validate you. Now, who's that going to be, that validation entity?
Right. That's the key point there. And I had this debate with somebody at B-Sides. Do you want all that on yourself? Do you want a government entity doing it? But getting out of the politics of all that, the technical capabilities is very interesting. I don't want to discount the topic that you brought up, Edward, because it's a very complicated topic. And I'd love to actually get somebody on who just specializes in decentralized identity, so we can talk about the pros and cons of society adopting something like this. But I'm very interested to see how this plays out from setting it up for a demonstrator for a customer in Entra. It's just something I haven't touched before.
Yeah, I know somebody that knows somebody, so maybe I'll ask him. He runs his own
Do it.
podcast, and he has somebody on the show to talk about it. So I'll reach out and see if we can get that same person to come on ours to talk about it.
Perfect. Bring him on, Edward. Absolutely. Let's do it.
But hey, let's get our guest on, because these Aussies can be very impatient and they get rowdy. They don't like to make you wait. They'll drop on you like a drop bear. Right,
like a drop bear.
Drop bear. So drop bear. So
it's all about the drop bear.
We have the luxury and the privilege of having Steven Hosking coming on. I knew of him because of his YouTube channel around Intune, but I got to meet him at Ignite, and I came over and I started talking. And I was like, "Hey, would you come on the show?" And he's like, "We got to talk a few other things." So I had to bribe him with something, right? That's how important people are, It's just like going to the Oscars. You get a red bag, you get a little chocolates in it and stuff like that. But hey, he came on.
They love Tim Tams.
I did not know that.
We typically bring them over as gifts because everybody else loves Tim Tams, apparently.
Okay, Edward, we'll get you some Tim Tams. It's an Aussie delicacy.
Although you can buy it over there now, apparently.
You can buy it in North America. They're made with 100% real drop bear. You're going to love it, Edward.
Exactly.
I like mine sprinkled with red back spider droppings on mine. So.
Exactly. As they should be.
A bite to it. So, Steven, I can't do your introduction justice. Come on and tell our listeners, about yourself, what you do, and why your YouTube channel is so successful, because that's pretty good.
Cool. So thank you for the introduction. Obviously, my name's Steven Hosking. I am part of the Windows Cat team at Microsoft. But in a previous life, I was a Microsoft MVP, so I can relate very much with Henrik, and congratulations, because it is a big deal. It's a lot of effort to get there. But my background is device management, so I've spent the last 20 years doing config manager, doing Intune, doing everything around OS management and being successful in that space. Over the last 5 years, I think it is. It's way too long, and I've gone grey by doing it. I've been doing a podcast with one of my colleagues, being Adam Gross, called Intune.training. And this is where we go out, we do a video most weeks. It's a bit spotty at the moment. We've been a bit busy. Where we talk about how to set up fundamental components of Intune. So that's the fun part of what we do, right? We could just have a lot of fun.
Yep. Awesome. That's really cool. And how long has the podcast been going on for? We'll drop a link in the chat there.
It's about 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
And it's super, super simple. It's just Intune.training. We lucked onto the domain name, and apparently when you search for training on Intune, it just goes straight to our content.
Hey,
I'm amazed.
That's how the internet works, baby. Yeah.
That's the SEO all day. Pay the credits, right?
Yeah.
I like
well, you go.
I like your archiving too. You can search on a topic, and
That's right.
it'll come right up on it. I was like, oh, okay, not just general. You can go in and say, I need to see how to do this, and they pop right up. So
Like,
really cool.
as much as we sit there and we say this is episode 1, season 1, whatever, it's designed in a way that you just pick up that content and consume what you need to consume. We don't want to sit there and say, hey, you should start on episode 1, season 1, because to be honest, it was pretty terrible.
Yeah,
But
I-
we've started the reboot and we're starting to rebuild all of that.
okay, all right. When you and I talked in Seattle doing a night, one
Yep.
of the things I requested is say, hey, I don't work in Intune, but the way Microsoft products are integrated, you sort of you touch everything, right? Since I work in the security arena around Defender, one of the things that they're recommending with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, in addition to the MDE capabilities, are you doing things around the endpoint surface, attack surface reduction stuff and some of the default policies, and you're starting to see some of these turn on. I wanted you to talk about that, because while I did go through not all of your episodes, I didn't see such a wide swatch around the security piece. Maybe because a lot of people think Intune's for security. Technically, it isn't. It's
No,
not.
well,
No.
and that's always been the misnomer with any device management platform from Microsoft. It's a conduit to deploy configurations. Even if we sit there and we say, we're going to go and deploy autopilot, well, all we're doing is we're deploying a configuration. And if we look back at Config Manager and SMS, it's the same concept, right? We're just deploying a bunch of settings. We have to enable the platform to be able to deploy that, but it's not a CMDB, which is what everybody tries to use it as. It's not your security platform. It's a conduit to deploy that configuration, and that's why we have the security blade inside Intune. But at the end of the day, we do talk about it, but it's very high level of, hey, you can do this and you should do this because Defender's awesome, but we don't go down to the deep level of, well, this is exactly what it's doing, if that makes sense.
Steven and Edward, they recently as well also had those capabilities like attack surface reduction, network protection, etc. Those are now also built into the Defender portal itself, because I think Microsoft received a lot of feedback like, why do I need my Intune folks and my Intune role individuals to enable or disable granular level Defender settings?
Yep.
Why can I just keep that within the security team? And I think they're giving people the option. So I'd love to get your take on that, Steven. Yes.
So I challenge that conversation on one regard. In my review and in how I work with a lot of my customers when we're deploying things like Defender, when we're deploying Intune, we're doing full device management integrations. Most organizations want their security team to be the watch guards. They're sitting there and saying, we're going to track everything that's going on. We have the visibility to capture all of the insights, but you shouldn't be the one sitting there and setting the configuration. The configuration should be owned by the device management team, because you, as the network admin, shouldn't technically have admin to the controls, because then you have the ability to disable that on your computer to be able to do something not necessarily in the company's best interest. So this is where it's that two key scenario. And that's where it gets really interesting, because there are other positions and views on that of, hey, you know what? I want my security team to do everything because I don't trust my end user compute, and vice versa. Because at the end of the day, that's what it actually comes down to, is we're either so big, we don't know our end user compute team or our security team or our identity team, or the inverse of, I just don't trust them because they've done something not quite right.
Yeah. It's taken decades for the system admins, the security, and the networking individuals to trust each other. They've joined forces now to gang up on a common enemy, and that's developers who want the keys to everything, right? And they're having these godlike rights in production, QA staging, right? And they're like, well, I don't want my development machine managed. where it's going to get managed, and you're going to like it, and you're going to check in and check out projects inside DevOps or either Git. So I see exactly where you're coming from. Now, will that ever be, because we're a software-driven world now, will that ever come to pass? Probably. Will we still probably be alive when it happens? Who knows?
Yeah,
But
you won't.
yeah, well, yeah, I'm probably oldest thing in the northern hemisphere right now.
Oldest thing in the northern hemisphere. Oh, that's good, Edward. That's a good self-deprecating
That's
joke
the
right
one.
there. I
Yeah,
like that. I like that.
yeah. So,
Yeah, go ahead,
Steven,
Edward.
I had one question, and Steve want to do this. So,
Yep.
this always baffles me why some people think this is so hard. And when you're looking at devices and the way that they are associated to directory, people are still confused by hybrid, AD, and co-managed. Why is that so hard for everybody? Can you just give me a 30-second for each one? What is hybrid? What is
All
AD
right.
join? And what is co-managed?
All right. So this one's where I've got to tread softly to not get myself into trouble. But at a high level, what we're looking at is we have Enter ID joined. So that's your cloud only. That is the utopic dream. You're then obviously managing it with Intune. It's making life easy. If we look at then what a hybrid joined computer is, so when we say hybrid, we're talking about hybrid Active Directory. Hybrid Active Directory is where we have an object in an Active Directory that's synchronized into Enter ID, and those objects are linked intrinsically. And I have a computer object in my on-prem Active Directory, and I can go and grab that token and authenticate across my whole network using that token, which is scary in itself, and there's a couple of really big problems with that. But when we talk about co-management is where it's the hybrid version of device management. So think of hybrid AD joined or hybrid Enter joined is the hybrid component for identity. Co-management is the hybrid component for device management. So it links your record for config manager to Intune and makes them work together.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Perfect. Nailed it. It's like he works in Intune.
Yeah, like he knows a little bit about it. Not just on his shirt either, right? Yeah, on his shirt.
You have an
Intune
Intune
man.
shirt? Can you want to show the viewers
Yeah.
that? Intune Training got their own logo. That's a sweet logo. Was that made
Man.
before the time of AI generated logos?
No. This was actually before it was hand jammed and created for
real humans.
MMS 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We now have a new logo, but I like this one better. So
That's cool. I don't like throwing out t-shirts either, Steven. It's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you do any research on the host? You know, Rod Trent fancied himself a SMS master for a while. I actually got his old books for Christmas. Man, they make good kindling to start your fire. So
Rod Trent, friend of the show. Friend of the show. Steven, you had an interesting topic you were telling us, Henrik and I, about in the green room before our master of ceremonies, Edward, joined. And do you want to elaborate on what's passionate about you and Intune today?
I'm passionate about a lot of things. Let's be very open and honest.
Oh, good. Like t-shirts. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But the big one for me, and while today we're going to talk about network authentication and everything associated with network access control, just networking in general for endpoint management is super, super high on my agenda at the moment. And I'm going to put it out there. It's my agenda. I want to drive this conversation. You need to look at how you set up your DNS because you're causing issues with how you're deploying packages. But we're not going to go into that one today. We're going to be talking about network authentication. I'm just going to drop that little nugget there about DNS because a lot of organizations have made it so they can't do anything on their remote sites because their DNS is coming to the central locations.
This is an argument as old as time. I know Edward wants to chime in on this as the network person, but we don't want to go down the DNS debate today, do we? But
the fun part with DNS though is it's typically not the networking team that has created the internal DNS networking issues. It's the IT admin.
Mm-hmm.
It's the believe it or not, it's the identity admin.
Yeah.
Because they went and consolidated all the domain controllers that had the DNS servers on them.
And it's not necessarily them either. The biggest
Yeah.
the biggest
Open the door. We opened the door.
yeah, the folks that cause you the most havoc, and I'm about to date myself about this. It was the system admin who was the Exchange server admin and the network admin,
Yep.
Hey, that was
and
me.
doing anything it
Exactly.
took to make Exchange work, right?
Exactly.
In the migration.
Exactly. Hey,
Yes.
exchanges was life, man. You had like that's all people care about. Like, is the email working? Like, they don't even understand.
Yeah.
I mean, short DNS names, pinned DNS,
Yep.
UPNs are mismatched. Sites and services is not healthy when you go into AD.
But also, obviously, we've got to talk about wins and NetBUI because
Goodness. We don't have the 3-hour show, unfortunately, gentlemen. This is gonna get out of control. Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
Well,
wins
let's
in that
pivot.
buoy.
Let's pivot. Well, okay. So, Steven,
as you
thanks
can
for-
see, we have a lot of fun about legacy technologies here.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's pivot away from the adventures of DNS to let's talk about network authentication, because network authentication is something that we run into quite often, where you go and do this new endpoint deployment, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to go enter ID joined. I'm going to get rid of my hybrid. Fantastic. And you go to connect to the network, and it's like, you can't authenticate. Why can't I authenticate? Oh, well, we do device-based authentication. Why do you do device-based authentication? Because it's more secure. Well, it's not. And then you peel the onion back and you go, well, why did you do this to start with? Oh, because we needed to be able to deploy group policy before the
There you
users.
go.
So
That was funny.
exactly, right? It's like this
Mhm.
little free kick, right? So this is where, when we talk about integration points, these are what slow down the deployment going to modern management. And network authentication is one of these big ones where we sit there and go, well, it's just easy. You just do this. And it's like, not quite. So I'm going to be naughty and I'm going to do a PowerPoint presentation because I decided to go and mock up some PowerPoints because I like PowerPoint.
We love PowerPoint at Microsoft, and there's nothing we would
Yes.
like more than to see your deck. Are you at 98 slides or 198? Because
Oh, it's a huge amount of slides. It's just really bad.
yeah,
I have 4.
perfect. You've optimized for the C-suite. We love that. I will add your
Exactly.
presentation to the screen, and there we go. Hopefully everybody can
And
see
ignore
that
that
all
it
right.
says Microsoft Confidential. It's not Microsoft Confidential. It's public knowledge. It just came from a slide that was internal. But basically, what we're building out here, and why I like talking around this, is because it's that level setting conversation where we sit there and go, well, what is the typical knowledge of customers when we talk about Wi-Fi authentication? And the first part that we start looking at is, well, yeah, we've got the network admins, but they really only care about the packets. They care about the VLANs. They care about the protocols. How do I connect? How do I do traffic? But they're also typically the owner of the radius server, right? They're the people that own the keys, the gate to the kingdom. But then let's step into, well, you've got your end user compute guys. They only care about the Wi-Fi profile landing on the device, right? They don't care about how the network works. They just care that I can get that profile on there and I don't get a phone call every time a C-suite goes, hey, yeah, I can't connect to the network because it's prompting me for my password and my password's changed. So no. We want to make this as simple as possible. And then you've got the identity admins, and they're the ones that only care about getting the authentication token, right? They literally only care about getting that auth token. That's it. Have you successfully authenticated? Yes. Great. Not a problem. You can go and do stuff on my network. Okay, cool. And then we have our friends in security, and they're like, wow, yeah, you know what? We have to do a posture check on the device. We have to sit there and do the most extreme protocols because it needs to be gold plated and most secure in the world, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
because then it's secure.
Because I want to de-risk my opportunity of connecting to the network. And then obviously we've got this nice little Venn diagram, and you got that little square in the middle. That's typically the consultant or the person inside your organization that's doing everything, that
Mhm.
knows how to link it all together.
Tribal knowledge, baby. Yeah.
That's right. But this is part of that conversation of, don't sit there and think you have to do everything. Understand, when going to do these modern projects, when changing how you work in your environment, you need to do it as a tribe. You can't just do it by yourself, or you need to pay for somebody to come in and do it for you.
Steven, I just want to relate super quick as a consultant, and the hardest thing that we find when we go into customer environments to execute is that we're not talking to one another. There's not a unified vision. Teams
Mhm.
don't
Yep.
communicate about our arrival and the intent beforehand, and often we're the individuals who have to inform of the change and then get buy-in.
Yes.
And that's just totally not the way it should work, but that's
And,
unfortunately the way it always works. Yeah.
and as a consultant for years, the one thing that Brody left out, you get certain individuals who want a covered favor right away with you, so you're on their side, right?
Oh yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
we need to
yes.
blame the networking guys. You agree, right? Sure.
Let's go and grab a coffee and have a conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's grab a beer. Oh,
Mhm.
okay. I'll look after it for you. Not a problem.
Mhm.
Definitely, and that's something that we definitely have seen throughout the years. We've all had that experience, and it's a matter of also looking at it as each one of those scenarios has a different dialect that they speak in.
Mm.
So if I sit there and talk about identity to my network admin, they're just going to go, well, yeah, I do PEEP. But if I talk to my identity admins, they're going to sit there and go, but I have to have it Kerberos. And it's like, okay, how do we sit there with that deciphering to handle that scenario?
Steven,
that's-
the network guy is gonna say, port number, please, source destination.
Yep.
Mhm.
Let's be very, very open and honest. But I can ping between the two locations in my network, so it must be your problem.
100%. 100%. Yeah. I'm going to go back to playing Diablo 4 now in the closet.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
And then you have the end user computer admins to say, "Oh, I see what the problem is. You're using a Mac. We don't do Macs around here. Let's figure it out. We don't do Macs." You know.
He has a Mac.
And then you get that one developer who decides he's going to be the sole person that runs Linux on the desktop because that's what he wants to develop in, right?
That's what the cool
Like,
kids do.
Okay.
Well,
sure.
and not just Linux. We're going to run a bespoke build that I went and compiled the kernel myself to make it so it's perfect.
Mhm.
And I removed all of the stuff that is not required.
Yeah.
Including like the authentication stack, because no, we're going to use this bespoke version of the Google authentication platform, but we're a full Microsoft shop.
Absolutely.
Wow, you've worked with quite a variety of people we talk about all the time.
It sounds like he's been in the center a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. I've been in the center a lot. Let's be very honest.
Noodle said they have Wi-Fi on planes now. Maybe another show. I'll give you adventures of Wi-Fi on the airplane.
Oh, yeah. I think he's referring to the fact that Rod's sitting here listening on the airplane.
Rod's a high roller. He lives in first class. He's probably in the cabin because he knows the pilots. But yeah, Steven, tell us about this ooey gooey middle dark purple square in the middle here.
Let's dive into the fun parts of network authentication or Wi-Fi authentication in this scenario. And we're going to, hang on, we didn't do a full build out. That's bad because we've got the external consultant. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Consultants, baby.
Yes. So what we have is what we call the 3 A's of network access. We have the authentication, right? That's the simple stuff. That's the really easy component. I'm going to sign in with my Entra ID account or my AAD Active Directory account, my identity token. I don't actually care where the identity token comes from. It could be as simple as I'm going to go and do a SAML connection to Facebook and allow you to do the authentication there. That's somewhat irrelevant, right? This is auth-n, where we're doing authentication. We're sitting there and we're going, we are who we say we are. The next one that's actually really interesting, honestly, super interesting from where I sit is authorization and auth Z. So this is where we're giving you permission. And this is where you can go and say, based on how you've authenticated to the network and the device that you've connected with, I'm going to give you access to certain segments of that network. So this is where we sit there, and industry-wide, it's called NAC, or Network Access Control. And how that builds out is we sit there and we can go and link that into external MDMs, in this scenario, Intune. And that's how we'll link it back to the nice little shiny Intune platform, which is awesome. But then we also have the ability to then route this across your network dependent upon scenarios associated in your platform.
Such
What
as
I mean by
risk,
that,
device
yes.
risk, ID risk, things of that nature. Sorry, Stephen, go ahead.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. We can sit there and say, you know what, you're running a version of Linux, but we don't know what it is. We're going to just put you to the public internet, and you can do whatever you want, but you're not going to get access to corporate resources because we're letting you connect to the network. That's a good start, right? And we're saying we're all good. You're on the network, but we're not going to give you access to our file servers and domain controllers because we don't trust your device.
Right.
Well,
And this is where...
Go ahead. I want to ask a question about that when you finish.
But this is where you sit there and go, we're trusting the user object, because that's how Enter ID, and that's the model we're moving to from a zero trust point of view, is we trust the user object, and then we're stepping into, let's trust everything else around that, because we can go and trust on a certificate object. We could go and trust on the OS version. We can trust on the compliance state of any of different telemetry points that are pulled into your Radius server, depending upon what they actually survive.
Yeah, my experience with NAC when it was in its fledgling days is you were relying on a very strict subset of conditions to be able to allow it, and then doing port access. Is one of the weaknesses still is either everything or nothing, whereas if the device compliance doesn't meet, very few places implement it right, where it throws you off into a quarantine segment where it gives you some access to at least communicate, hey, I'm in a bad way, what's going on? And I thought that there was a gravitation away from network access control by using other products that look at the device and identity posture to allow that
Yes.
device. Am I off
And that's
base?
correct. No, you're correct. So from a Microsoft offering point of view, obviously, and this is where I'm got to be very short and not do the whole I'm really unhappy about it, but we have MPS, obviously, Network Policy Server, but what was there until 2012 timeline was NAC. So this was an offering from Microsoft, but it was tied to Windows XP, and it just got deprecated because nobody was using it. And there are vendors that have this technology. So you have like Cisco actually has the AnyConnect client that you can put on your computer. It'll do posture checking and all of that. But what you can also use is the device compliance state that you use for conditional access from Intune.
Right.
And that's where it becomes really powerful, because I don't need to control or have multiple different places to set my device compliance. I can just sit there and go, I'm going to consume my device compliance status based upon my Intune compliance status. Once I have that, that's being used for conditional access, that's being used for my wireless access, that's being used for my VPN access. So then I use that as my gated control of yes or no, you can do things.
Is the fidelity and the smoothness consistent with between what we talked about earlier, interjoint, hybrid, and AD, so that you know that the devices that primarily sit in a traditional legacy, I go in the office, I sit down, I have a dedicated workstation. That's got to be problematic, because I don't know anybody that has a workstation that they use out as their primary machine. So has that been resolved, where it doesn't really matter where you are and how you authenticate across those postures?
So yes, you can use your traditional tooling for this.
Okay.
So you can use Config Manager to capture your device compliance status. and either connect straight into the vendor if they support it, or you can publish it up into Intune as a co-managed device and then have that used for conditional access as well as your network access control.
Nice.
And
those special scenarios are covered off.
Yeah.
I've seen issues with that scenario drawn out of the customer where they were having issues because they were using Okta and as a pass through, and it was manipulating the device, make something of identity token, and it wouldn't recognize it, and they said no, we can't do it, and they never figured a workaround, and the customer didn't want to. They wanted to get rid of Okta, but they had so many applications registered, it was going to be a pain. So that's one of the things.
A very common conversation.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So what about devices that are enrolled, but let me come back to that question. I'm trying to recant something that I saw last year with a buddy of mine called me and said, "Man, have you seen this before?" And I'm like, I'm not super depth on Intune like that. Let me.
Are you talking about like MAM managed devices and things like that, where what we're doing is we're not registering it into the tenant, but we're adding it to the tenant, so we can sit there and put a policy on there and things like that, right? We can handle that to a point. So there is a level of compliance policy that can be associated to that. But also, and this is where I'm not going to get on my ranty horse. I'm going to try to avoid it. But when we're talking about mobile phones, when we're talking about, like, I've got multiple different phones here, I want to sit there and go, why do I need to manage those devices? If it's just to make sure that my corporate data is secure, do I need to actually manage the device, or do I need to manage the applications that are accessing the content?
Well, that question came into existence when companies realized, oh my God, I can save so much money by going to BYOD and I have corporate devices, which will ultimately end up being a downfall of Research in Motion / BlackBerry, right? Because people are like, I'm not going to invest into it. Now, certain companies I do know still give you a company issued device. Think agency, if you're in DC, pharmaceuticals, like you don't get to use your own, you use this device, right? And so certain instances they make you do it, but for the most part, everybody's bring your own device or bring your own access, right?
Yeah,
and doing that.
I've seen scenarios as well where organizations don't provide you a phone, but they'll give you the ability to register into their tenant, so you can send down a Wi-Fi profile because the mobile phone coverage on their sites is so poor.
Nice. Well, and I love my Android. I like Android work profile. I like having that containerization. I love that so much. The one thing I probably won't switch to iOS until that is ever. I think there's virtualization now, right?
iOS has a functionality where you can set up profiles, where you can. They're called focus profiles, where you can sit there and say, I'm going to allow notifications from these applications. It's not the same as Android, where Android, it puts it into a separate container and I'm protecting everything. It's still leaving the apps on the device. They're still running. They still get all of the information, but you just don't get the notifications. You don't get any alerts from those apps.
Can organizations perform targeted wipes against those work apps or that data, though, on iOS? No. It would need to be fully managed or not managed at all.
You've obviously got MAM as well, where are we still calling it MAM? No, we're calling it application protection policies, where you can sit there and go, you don't have access to that content anymore and it gets removed, right? So there are controls around that, around removing corporate data, but it's adventures associated with that one as well.
I thought I read somewhere where Apple is trying to, I've been on a Reddit site, that with the ability to have eSIM, that you can pin the profile to the eSIM, because all my phones can support 2 SIMs, right? A physical, and then there's one on the phone board, whatever they call the motherboard on it. And then being able to, but Apple doesn't allow you to boot and designate and isolate the SIM, because I can see SIM jumping, right? If they're both in the same phone. That would be great, because if you can have two phone numbers on there and designate which phone number is primary, then you can work on that same phone and be isolated apps based on that SIM. But the iOS doesn't go down that deep on it yet. That
No, iOS doesn't have that level of containerization, and that's why Android has been able to be successful. But I think Henrik is trying to get in there and say something.
Oh, sorry, Henry. The screen is small. I see.
Yeah, sorry. No, I just wanted to, as long as I remember it, we talked about the device compliance, right? On the items. Isn't there a check if I'm an evil hacker from the
Yes.
movies Hackers, and I steal
course.
I steal a token, hack the planet.
Hack the planet.
Hack the planet.
Chris is going to change the world.
I can replay the token, right? If I steal a token with evil engine X or something like that, and the device compliance policy, the conditional access, right?
Yeah.
It will be a minute before it can actually run the check again, right? On the device. So I can basically steal a PRT token or something like that from an Android or Windows or Mac, probably, and replay it from another device.
Well, that comes down to how you've set up your identity. So if we're looking on Windows, this is where you should be using Windows Hello for Business. With Windows Hello for Business, you don't have the ability to replay that token onto another device because of how the next-gen credential has been set up. What's you're going to see eventually play out with Mac OS is they're going to platform SSO with Secure Enclave, which will do much the same as what you do with Windows Hello for Business. And then Android and iOS, you need to either root the device or you need to jailbreak the device, depending on the vendor, to be able to do that. And this is where in the controls for application protection policies, as soon as you see a device rooted or jailbroken, your corporate data is wiped and removed.
Nice.
So, Steven, what's your take on the what's your take on Defender for iOS? Because I have it on my personal phone in my lab, and it blocks so many things because he thinks everything's TikTok. It just stops it, right?
What is TikTok?
There you go. It's some evil thing. Because I go to Uber to order Uber Eats. We block malicious content going to TikTok. You go to anything. So I'm thinking that these companies are selling advertising back in via TikTok or something. And I saw a customer request say, "Hey, we need to turn this off," because every time our users go to a website, it's saying, "I blocked you at TikTok." I'm like, I don't even have TikTok. Is TikTok an app? Or yes, an app. I've never been to TikTok.
So the question that I would posit to you is that an issue with the Defender for Endpoint client, or is that an issue with how the policies are being configured?
I don't know.
Because like we use it internally at Microsoft, right? We have Defender on all of our devices. It's all light touch. I don't get rarely ever do I have any problems other than, hey, you need to update your phone. No, you need to update your phone. If you don't update your phone by tomorrow, you're going to lose access to corporate resources.
No email. Oh no.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, that's a shame.
But that's the where it comes down to how you've set up your configuration. So if you're sitting there and saying, I'm going to block TikTok, but then you have vendor X in your scenario, you said like Uber Eats, for example. If one of those vendors in there is using TikTok as their CMS to present out a video because they're cheap, then you're going to have that blocked, but then it's going to block the app because the app's making the call to TikTok.
That explains a lot, because that would explain it. Hey, 2 easy questions.
So hold on, Edward. He needs to do his third bullet point.
He hasn't done accounting yet?
No, we can't do tech support here. He's because you guys trying to do a presentation. So like
accounting's irrelevant.
All right.
Hey, why you think I got him on here? Right?
Yeah.
I'm getting typing the answers right. There you go. All right, let's get to the accounting piece.
Okay.
So look, at the end of the day, the third bullet point, as Brody alluded to, is accounting. And as you've probably read over the last 10 minutes while we've had the digression, accounting is super important because we're sitting there and capturing the metrics of how the device connected, everything associated for it, right? So when we sit there and say not used by most, it's only used ever to do event logging. If you're going to sit there and do chargeback and sit there and when you go to hotels, or let's use a topical scenario, airplane Wi-Fi, where they sit there and charge you for usage, they're definitely using the accounting functionality because they're sitting there and saying, we're going to account for how many bytes have gone down to that device, or we're going to account for how long you've been connected for before we start charging you more or we slow you down. And this is also where it's going to that level of, hey, we made a deal with Facebook so you can go to Facebook as much as you want, but YouTube, no, you can't go to YouTube because that's going to eat up our bandwidth. So we're not going to allow you to go there. So it starts that conversation.
Easy workaround. Well, the reason Brody, the reason Brody, I didn't let him do accounting because he said excluded from this training, so I figured we were going to skip it. Right? It says excluded. Easy workaround. Get on your hands and knees, looks around the hotel room, find the Ethernet port that goes back to a switch that has no type of accounting and network control.
Unplug the network cable out of the back of the TV. They're normally on a fast network that has no authentication.
All the time. Not that we would ever do that.
No, that's yes. We're checking for vulnerabilities of the environment.
Yeah, we would never go into an open door in a data center in a hotel and see an unprotected switch in the UPS power supply that they were using a Fortinet 60DE, right? So,
yeah, no. Never.
Brody might though. These morals, Canadians, So can I ask my easy question now, Brody?
Yes. Well, I'll let Brody make the decision.
I'll let Steven decide if he's going to answer your question mid-presentation. Go ahead, Steven.
When are we going to stop saying Intune and say Microsoft Endpoint Manager? Which one is it?
It's Intune. So Microsoft Endpoint Manager has actually been changed back to Microsoft Intune.
Okay.
So
Did you get the memo, Edward? The internal memo at Microsoft talking about the name change?
I don't read those.
Because your DNS was buggered up.
Yeah, probably. In my Microsoft network, I'm probably running bind downstairs DNS. I'm doing that. And
on your T1 link.
I'm bundling the circuits together. Oh, that was it. I was just wondering because I still see references to it. I'm like, I think everything's ran back to Intune. Why we still saying MEM and doing that?
Yeah, so that got rebranded back about 6 months ago.
I still see references coming up. I'm like, they haven't updated the docs. They need to get the docs up.
You still see references to Azure Active Directory as well.
Advanced threat protection. Actually, I think the
ATP. But which ATP?
Exactly. Well, I mean, if you have everything's the same acronym, then we're all talking the same language.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah,
it just goes back to our Venn diagram of it's all the same acronyms. It's fine. Everybody knows that we're talking about that.
Okay. All right. So, we're almost at time here. Let me ask you a question.
He's got to get through the presentation. We got to give him the full break. He's got 4 slides. We've gone through 2 slides. We've got to give him.
I totally did not hear he had 4.
Yeah,
my bad.
4. Okay, that's okay. It's okay. Go ahead, Steven.
Let's jump to the next one, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions and conversation around this one. But this is a build-out slide where what I like to talk about is actually what we're doing when we're doing the authentication component, because this is a confusing component that a lot of people struggle with, which is, well, I've connected to the network and I've authenticated, but what is actually happening under the hood? Well, we connect to the SSID. From there, I've got animations. The Radius server will present out its certificate. And why it's important to say the Radius server is presenting out this certificate is because it's required when you're creating your Wi-Fi profile. You need to know which server you're using. Well, it's a scale unit scenario. You can add as many CAs as you'd like. My environment, I don't want to have 2 because then I have to use the capabilities of my laptop to handle that. It's a fair question, but most organizations will have a root and subordinate CA. No tax CS. So in here, we then go off and we're going to check to see if it's from a trusted provider. because that's always important. We're going to make sure that the certificate matches the policy name. And most importantly, we're going to check to see if it's not expired. The revoked is only if you've got access to a CRL. At that point, it's tertiary, and you can put some controls around, well, you don't have access, so check it next time you come online. The next part we're going to do is the device is actually going to sit there and present its token and go, hey, yeah, look, I am this person. Look, I am this device. And we're then going to go and check the CA to make sure it's the same scenario. Is it from our trusted certificate authority? Is it expired? Is it revoked? No, it's all good. It's happy. We then have a secure tunnel created because we're using EAP, and then we're using TLS on top of that or inside of that, where it's going to then pass the credential object, because we're doing 2 levels of authentication at this point, where we're sitting there and saying, well, yeah, here is our authentication blob to the Radius server, which then passes that up to the domain controller. And it goes, yeah, cool. You've got a secure tunnel. You can do stuff. But you'll note that we still don't have access to our application server or our internet, because we now need to go and check the Intune device compliance status, because this is the authorization component. We did auth up until line 7. We've authenticated. We're happy. We're now moving into authorization, or auth Z. We're going and checking to see if the device is compliant in Intune. And at that point, we come back and go, yep, it is compliant. And you've got access to your whole network. This is the VLAN you're going to, and this is the IP address that you're going to be given. So that is how we sit there and we will route that traffic based upon how we do that authentication.
Trevor with all the smart-ass comments. We're loving it.
Yeah.
Boy, all you people at Microsoft have all the toys, animated PowerPoint slides. Trevor, you have no idea. You have no idea.
I think
you have the best slides.
Yeah. It's when you turn this slide into a GIF, that means that you've sat there and spent far too long creating content.
Yeah.
I like how you phrased this. I like how you called the conditional access engine effectively, or the compliance policy, the actual authorization mechanism here, right? Okay, we've
Yes.
authenticated, but what's actually allowing us to access what we want to access? Well, you got to prove that your plumbing's in order before you get on our network. We don't want your dirty plumbing on this network.
That's right.
So I like how you phrased that.
Yeah, and the thing is, what we can do, and I have a second graphic, but I don't have it here because it was overkill to go through the whole thing. But you can sit there and go, well, with unsuccessful authorization, I'm still going to allow you to access the internet, but you're not getting access to any of my corporate resources.
Mm-hmm.
And why that's important is because then, especially when we look at a Intune cloud managed device, it gives you the ability to go and check to see, am I secure or not? Am I safe or not? Can I get compliant? Because if I don't have a mechanism to be able to get compliant, then I'm going to have a phone call from a C-suite going, hey, I've been traveling for 2 weeks. My computer hasn't patched, and now you're telling me it's not compliant.
Right. Good point.
I don't want that
to be able
phone
to
call.
self-heal. Right. We want
Yeah.
to be able to automate this. Good point.
Yep. And that's the model that everybody should be starting to look at is, well, how do I make sure I trust but verify? I trust you as a user. I trust your device as a device, but I need to verify that you are actually doing what you're saying you're doing.
Good call.
Yeah, and a good architecture is to not just say you aren't compliant, but tell why you aren't, and put them in a remediation network. And if they fail the
Correct.
remediation network too many times, you put them in a quarantine that makes them start all over to be able to do it.
Oh, no. You don't put them in quarantine. You just send a wipe command.
Start over. Autopilot.
I like the way you say, yeah,
Continue profile.
start over.
Yeah. Why not?
Everything's in the cloud. All your documents are in OneDrive. All your files are in Outlook.
Or
You
you
get
can
everything
use,
from the cloud. Oh, you decided to save somewhere locally on the computer. Well, that's not my problem.
Too
It's
bad.
beyond corporate policy.
or you make everybody use Azure Virtual Desktop.
W365, I believe the term is.
Oh, but there you go.
Oh, speaking of names. But yeah, good point. It's never been easier to wipe a machine and then just have it rebuild instead of screwing around with it, to be honest with you. As somebody who had to deploy fleets and fleets of things on other technologies, it's nice. Just shove everything in the cloud and, oh, well, I lost my device.
Yep.
My device is infected. My device is broken. Screen's broke, whatever. Here we go. Let's recover quick.
One of the favorite things about a service that Microsoft is sunsetting, actually this month, was Microsoft Managed Desktop. And so now they love the security aspect of it, and they love the Intune management of it. So the natural progression now is telling everybody who's consuming that product, you have to go to Defender Experts, right? But we don't have an Intune offering for it. So now the customers have to come up to speed on Intune to manage that. And now we're starting to see more interest in auto patch, which is one of the biggest things that keeps you off the network. So I am dealing with that now with customers who are being told you got to come off of it, right?
Well,
So
yeah, that was my product, and we can definitely talk offline about that one.
we'll talk offline about it for sure. Then, yeah. So I see it coming.
Yeah. So to answer back to the LinkedIn users question, any roadmap for Entra ID for user authentication for SSID instead of domain authentication? The simple answer is it's actually there today in some vendors, but you have to use what's called RSOP authentication. And if you look up RSOP in our docs, it goes, use this as a last resort, because it's still a very new protocol that's still being defined and still being identified.
Yeah.
The question that I would posit back and ask on that scenario is, why do you need to authenticate to your corporate Wi-Fi? So why, and this is probably something to leave with as an earworm to think about, is if we're sitting there and saying, well, you've worked from home for the last 3 years, you've set up all the VPN infrastructure, it all works successfully, and people have been able to do their job. Why would I sit there and put my corporate network on my Wi-Fi? Why would I just not sit there and go, well, here's the internet, and then VPN in as you need to? Because then what that means is I'm reducing my security risk. But what it also means as well is if you've got, like most organizations where you've centralized your data center into a colo data center, you don't actually have any physical servers in your offices anymore. Why do I need to route my corporate network to those offices? Why do I need to do SD-WAN? Why do I need to do anything more than just dropping in an internet line, giving them network routability and going, okay, whenever you need to connect to corporate resources, here's either an always-on VPN or here's a on-demand VPN that you connect as needed. And the question always comes back, but what about my printers? It's like, well, turn them off and get rid of them? No, we can't do that.
Please.
That would be that's the utopic dream, right? Like every admin wants printers gone. But that's always going to be the stopping point. It's like, well, yeah, but you can set them up as internet-based printers as well, and you can limit it to just your devices, and you can use things like universal print.
Let's not do that. Let's not do that.
What about getting away from like VPN altogether and leveraging internet access and other capabilities?
I love that functionality. It is so good.
It's a game changer.
Yeah, global secure access. Like I'm on the internal test case for it. There's some interesting experiences we get with it. But it's fantastic. I can sit there, I go and deploy it out and go, only my corporate resources can be signed into. So you can't go and sign into a secondary Office 365 tenant.
Right.
Oh my God. How are you not looking at that? And that's part of that conversation of whether it's a VPN, whether it's a SASE solution, it's let's look at how we simplify what we do. Because honestly, from an end-use compute point of view, if you're not simplifying how you manage your devices, simplify how you're engaging in your environment, you're doing it wrong.
You're fighting uphill. Yeah, no doubt. Henrik?
It's all about simplification.
Yeah. Good call.
But this goes back to your first slide. You got to get everybody in those circles to talk.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Good point.
Everybody has to talk. and say, hey, this
Yep.
is this, yeah. Or you have to have the appropriate ringmaster that says everybody's going to talk or else,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And make it work, right? And when you don't
And
have that
vision and drive the vision.
and drive the vision, you have to have SOT or stakeholder empowerment to say we got to get this done. And generally, unless something bad has happened or threatened to happen, fell an audit breach because of lack of this type of architecture, it's hard to get that buy-in, especially if it costs money. And money is sometimes people. I got to hire somebody to do this. We're fine. You know, we're good, right? So, and this brings back memories early in the career, talking from radius servers and TACAS to DNS. I'm surprised we didn't go split brain and and a few other things, right? Split tunneling.
Split tunneling. I love
Yeah,
split tunneling.
there you go.
As an end use compute, it is brilliant. As a networking person, you sit there and go, "Oh, how's it secure?"
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
Hey, before we roll off, because I think we're wrapping up here. What's one
Yep.
feature coming down the pipeline in the Intune stack that you think everyone should be aware of, and then that you're very excited about?
The one feature in the Intune stack that I'm so excited about and cannot wait to start talking about, because it's public that we're doing it and that we're working with Apple on it, but I don't have access to be able to test it and play with it, is a feature called Platform SSO in Mac OS.
I don't know it. High
So
level?
basically, think of what we have. One of the big pain points we have with managing Mac OS today in Intune is, and most MDMs, there's some vendors have worked around it with their own clients and things like that, but you don't have the ability to control the local user account on the device. And what that means is I'm sitting there, I go and provision a new device, and you're automatically going to be an admin on that Mac. And I don't have the ability to control that, right? Platform SSO adds the functionality for your IT admin to control how you do that authentication, sync it with your Entra ID account, and handle that scenario.
Cool.
So-
I didn't think about that.
I thought that this existed a while back. I thought that there was a directory service that Apple offered for a while that they tried to offer, right?
Sort of, yeah. And Jamf has a solution
Yeah,
to
Jamf,
handle
right.
it, but they bypass it. And so Jamf, you need to have their Jamf IDP, which sits on top of the Jamf Pro license, and it gets really messy and really expensive. Yay! But this is where Apple is building this into the OS, and you send down the policy and it will handle it, so long as there is a platform SSO engine to coordinate it. So it's much the same as the enterprise SSO for apps on Mac OS today.
So the story is basically gonna be Android users saying, "Oh, we had this for years," and iOS say, "Oh, we just got this feature," and it's gonna be Windows. Yeah, we could use our Entra ID login for like 7 years now or something like that. And macOS goes like, "Yeah, we just got this feature."
Yes, that's correct.
Well put. Well put.
Yep.
There you go.
Hey, I
And-
want to quickly plug your YouTube channel one more time here. Trevor's calling it out. Steven, let's hear.
So
about
yes,
YouTube videos.
Trevor, to answer your question, yes, this is all the theory sort of stuff that we talk about on our YouTube channel on Intune Training. Typically, they're an hour long. We do demos, and we typically will go through the click-throughs, but we will talk about why you're doing the click-throughs and why you're doing each scenario, because that's way more important than somebody sitting there and clicking a button on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll be checking it out. Thank you.
Well, sir, I really appreciate you coming on, taking the time. I know, scheduling coming back to the new year. That's the reason I pinged you, because everybody was overwhelmed as soon as they got back in office, right? The email keeps coming. And you're welcome to come back to the show anytime. As more and more, these features, especially if it's something really cool, coming back and tell our users about it. Because now that I know that Intune is going to stay Intune's not going away. People are starting to embrace it, use it, seeing the power of it. If you take time to configure it and find someone who's not doing 3 other jobs and you're telling him to do that job also, that's the thing, right? And a lot of the out of the box stuff is cool. Like it needs to follow baselines. That's a no-brainer. I'm liking that right there. being able to do that. And but this has been very informative. I'll tell you, I'm not an Intune person. People expect me to know it,
You
but
people.
to people, customers, right?
Yeah.
They don't know Intune, right? Intune is you put it on your guitar string, ding. It's
Or
Intune now.
auto-tune
There
if
you
you're
go.
share. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Just share.
Yeah, right. Yeah, every artist in the last 10 years. Yeah.
Well, sir, thanks for coming on the show.
Not a problem.
We'll definitely, forward people to your social channels, your YouTube, your blog, because it is informative. I've gone in and answered a couple of questions in my lab, like I did not know that. So you get it on one TV and you look, so click here, do that, do this, right?
Yeah.
Then I got to wait through your explanation. Just tell me what button to click.
So many people are like, stop talking, too much talking, just get to the point. And it's like, no, but that's why we're here, and we're going to sit there and keep explaining it.
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining it.
And if you
want to skip ahead, just fast forward,
Well,
and
we have a really nice guy that goes in like a day or two after we publish the video, and he'll just go and put the timestamps on for us. So you can then click through to where you want to be.
Cool.
We have that too. I think Henrik just put 0 and in. There you go. 0 and in. You're done. And we do that. If you ever have a need where you just can't find anything interesting to talk about, we love to come on your show. I don't think we visit that many other shows. I got invited to come on. Boulder, you've been on.
I get invited all the time, but then they learn that you're my co-host, and they're like, I don't know.
Yeah, I get it. You got to watch who you associate with.
It's true. You really do.
I'm about to ruin Henrik's reputation here in March.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. Oh yeah. So we'll see.
But Steven,
Sir,
you have to
thank
come
you
back
so
on
much.
in the future too. Like, we'd love to have you back.
Yeah,
Oh
definitely.
yeah, come on, man.
Yeah.
And please come on and heckle us. If you hear something that's totally wrong, like that is wrong, right? We take that. So to our listeners, thanks for coming
There'll
on.
probably be a Teams message, let's be honest, and not in the public chat.
Oh, if it's Teams, it'll never come in there. The way Teams work.
He'll get it tomorrow.
Steven will also give you our Discord channel link, so if we want to get into a debate with anybody on certain things, I mean, go for it. But you don't feel obligated to run tech support questions for Edward or anything. But I'm sure people love to have another person on to ask questions about.
We gotta give the people what they want. How do you know those questions didn't come through the Discord? Oh, because you haven't been in it, Bodie. That's why. So I'm in Discord. You're not logged in now because I don't see
I'm
you
logged in every day, bud. Don't even get me started. You told me you couldn't install Discord the other day.
Yeah. I figured it out though.
Oh yeah,
Defender,
install
Defender,
store.
Defender.
Yeah. Defender. Yeah, all right. Go figure. It was Defender all along. All right. Thanks for keeping us safe.
A lie doesn't care who tells it. There you go.
Exactly.
Steve, thanks a lot, sir. Hammer, thanks for coming
guys.
on. To our listeners,
Fun.
Thanks for
back next week. Unfortunately, we'll have Rod and we'll have Andrea back. I know you guys enjoyed just me and Brody, but hey,
sorry.
You get what you can. So
yeah.
All
right, I'm gonna hit the button. We're gonna do this. Peace out, everyone.
Do it.
Peace.